Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Unfudge Your Marketing. This is a show where I chat with business owners about their marketing missteps, mishaps, and things that just didn't go their way. Most importantly, sharing the lessons that they've learned with all of you, our listeners. I'm your host, Christy Mitchell. I am a marketing strategist and consultant. I work with service based business owners who have relied on referrals and word of mouth to build their business. And they know in order to take their business to the next level, they need to finally think more strategically about their marketing. Today, I am super excited to be welcoming Mindy Flanagan onto the show. Mindy loves simple. After 20 years of working in the HR outsourcing industry, she grew impatient and concerned about the stigma that small businesses had about human resources. HR was too complex. She was inspired to change that and saw an opportunity to uncomplicate the complicated. This is why Mindy and I get along so well. Always sensing that HR was far more art than science, Mindy leads a team of business professionals skilled at HR who understand that the best HR infrastructure should not only be labor law compliant, but aligned with the culture that a company wishes to achieve or stay true to. With culture far more affected by marketing efforts than many business leaders and strategists realize. So, with that, I will welcome Mindy onto the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. How's my New York girl today?
I know. I love all the different connections that we have. So
I
just to give our
know.
listeners a quick backstory. So Mindy and I were actually introduced by a mutual connection, somebody that I met at a virtual networking event. They're both in the HR space, and he was like, I
Do
need
you
to
even
introduce
remember
Chuck.
who that was now?
Chuck. It was Chuck Cooper.
Chuck. Yes. The, the,
Yes.
the man who is famous for uncoupling people from their PEOs. Yes, I know him well. Yes.
Yes. So Chuck was like, let me introduce you to Mindy. You have to know her. And we had a great call. Realized your family has a camp in the Adirondacks. I drive by that on our boat every summer when we go spend a week up there. So yeah, we have all these cool
Yeah, I
little
told
connections
him that story this morning. He's like, "Oh my God, sometimes we feel like the world is huge, and then I hear a story like that, and we realize how small it is." So, yeah.
It really is. It
Yeah.
really is. It's so small. So Mindy and I have known each other for a couple of years now. We've stayed in touch. I've helped out a little bit with some HubSpot consulting that you had some questions on, working on the strategy side of HubSpot. And yeah, we had a conversation briefly about kind of your experience in hiring a website provider and then kind of going through a process, or I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Going through an experience where you learned kind of things that you thought were being done weren't really being done, and then I would love for you to kind of like take us through that experience that you had and kind of what were those lessons that you learned through that.
Thank you. And I hope that the story I tell resonates with other small business owners and leaders who might be in the same boat as me. When I started Inspiring HR in 2007, you can't even begin to grasp all the things you're going to learn out of necessity, even though you never thought you'd have to learn them, like marketing and QuickBooks and what the heck WordPress is and SEO and how that affects your marketing strategy. And there are some days I'm grateful, some days I'm not, that I feel so far removed from HR, even though I own an HR consulting practice. So every once in a while, a friend will call me, I'll give them HR advice, and I remind myself, oh, good, I still know what I'm talking about. So my journey with the website is, if you fast forward from 2007, when I had no money and wasn't even an LLC yet, to now, it was PowerPoint thrown up on WordPress back in 2007, which I don't even remember what that looked like. And then um, I had one website provider who just couldn't seem to get her act together with just billing me on time, and there were gaping holes. But I really didn't have a set marketing strategy or vision then. So in fairness to her, I was sort of doing my best with the information I had at the time to guess at what should be on the website. And you think about that was 2010, 2011. I mean, I don't know what was the world of SEO back then is not the world of SEO now, and probably SEO will be different next week. So I went to her, and then we, for a long time, were with a provider that I really loved him, really loved him. We had a great working relationship. And I knew in my mind that he was more programmer and it had more to do with security than website performance. mean, I really peeled back the layers and started to worry about our SEO scores a little bit more as I started to understand them and how they impacted our efforts and my desire to generate more, at least unqualified leads from the website, like enough people who were willing to have a conversation with us to find out if they had any HR opportunity for improvement or gaps or had a specific HR pain points that we could help them with. And it was a harsh realization that the last website upgrade, my glaring hole was this. I had to learn about 404 errors and 301 redirects, which I know you probably know what that is, but I didn't know what that was at the time. And I had to do there was a harsh realization in 2023 that in 2021, whatever got indexed from our old site didn't have 301 redirects on it. And I think our website out in Google world, as I call it, had at least 99 pages that were giving displaying a 404 error. So that's when I learned a lot more about indexing. And like I said, the reality was I can love the person, but the person who's the provider, but then you also mature into understanding more and pairing it with a vision and a strategy. And you realize even with providers, sometimes you have the wrong person in the wrong seat. So we had to make a change again. And so I'm grateful for the journey. But you think about that from 2000, if anybody's being hard on themselves from 2007 to 2024, and I'm an impatient, learn it now kind of person, it took me that long to really say, I'm not going into WordPress anymore, but I need to surround myself with people smarter than I. And what are the numbers that are important to me to measure every month to figure out where we have gaps in our strategy and our execution as far as marketing concerned. And it's not perfect now. It's never going to be perfect, but I have more confidence in it because I feel like through that journey, I learned what people to put in those seats, even as contractors. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I feel like there's so many little nuggets I want to pull out. So the first thing I want to go back to is when you said you hired that first person initially, and it didn't go well. And you said, in fairness, I didn't really know what I needed either.
I didn't. I didn't even have a set brand. Like I had my logo, but building a brand around the tagline and understanding marketing campaigns and a visionary statement that was a rallying cry, I could continue to build in particular a visual brand around. We didn't have any of that. So we were kind of just winging it then.
Yes. Yeah. And I want to say, Mindy, first of all, that so many of these things that you're sharing in this are so common to many other conversations that I've had. So I know that there are other business owners out there who are either going through this themselves or will be or have. And like you said, maybe they're still beating themselves up over it. So these are all very common things that I hear from business owners, that the fact that, like, in hindsight, okay, we didn't get what we needed, but also I didn't really know what to ask for. I think that is so common and such a big challenge for business owners because you're not a marketer. And honestly, Mindy, one thing I love about you is that you do have that, like, I'm going to go learn it, and I'm going to learn it to a point that I need to, and then I know I need to hire an expert for it. I absolutely love your
There's a line for which you, as the business owner and leader, particularly if you're leading a group of employees, you have to have some kind of instinct that there's a line that your brain can only handle too much. And you yourself needs to be the right person in the right seat. This is why I love a system called EOS, where it talks about if you're the business owner, are you the visionary or the integrator? Two very different roles. But for me now to be comfortable as the visionary, there's that line of what I know and watch for and measure versus what the integrator, which is in essence a COO or a VP of operations, would worry about, or a head of sales and marketing. I mean, you kind of decide it through this building of an accountability chart, but I've been the same with a small company and trying to apply that formula to right people in the right seats, even for contractors. Like, we're not going to have a full-time bookkeeper or controller yet, but I need the right part-time fractional bookkeeper to be the right person in the right seat. So it's same thing is applied with marketing and sales for sure.
Yeah. Now, moving forward to that, the second relationship, like you talked about, hiring someone who was more of a developer, coder, at what point, because I think you worked with that person for a while, and like you,
it was 8 years, might have been 8 years.
Yeah. Okay. And like you said, right, you really liked the provider. And I think that is a big thing that we need to have. And I always tell potential clients when we're talking, like, I may not be the person for you. We have to have a certain relationship, a certain like same understanding, shared values, those kinds of things. And I do believe there's providers for everybody, all different business, types and business owners and personality fit and skill wise. And so the fact that you had someone that you liked is great, and that's probably what sustained the relationship for so long, right? Because if you didn't like them and you kind of were like, they're not listening to me, that's another thing I've heard from other guests on the show. Like, I just felt like my marketing provider wasn't listening to me. They weren't asking questions. They weren't taking feedback. So it sounds like that wasn't an issue. There was a good fit personality wise. When was it that you kind of started digging in more to say, okay, there might be some problems here?
I had a marketing strategist that was just engaged with us just for a year. Super smart guy. Steven, you met him, I think. Um, and he was the one that was willing to say, Mindy, I'm not the one to granularly get into all of this, but my instincts tell me something isn't adding up here. You have a really good website. It's on brand. You're going through this path of defining campaigns in terms of outreach through HubSpot and your CRM. Something's just not adding up here. And I know you've sort of rolled your eyes at SEO. And years ago, I did an exercise where I'm like, well, should be we investing in Google campaigns, right? Or Google keywords or something that costs me money within Google ads, right? And I realized that for as much as I love this space of small business HR consulting, there are lots of big players in this market that have way deeper pockets than I do. So anytime I wanted to really consider getting a Google ad out there to land on page one of anybody searching for small business HR consulting, I was competing against ADP and Paychex and these very large PEO or payroll entities that rolled HR into the totality of their offering. And I couldn't and wouldn't spend $10,000 per month minimum to get on page one of Google. So that was a non-starter. But
Mm-hmm.
still, we should have had more organic traffic, we felt. So I pushed and pushed. And I had introduced to me this dreadful report. Gordon, if you're listening, I think you know I hate this report. Stephen found me someone to do a deep dive on the website through this thing called a SEMrush report, which I'd never even heard of. And man, did it just expose some gaping holes in terms of those 404 errors and
Mm-hmm.
opportunities for better keyword performance organically in blogs. And look, I now no, I seem like I know what I'm talking about, but if any of you think I'm writing the blogs or going into WordPress and fixing any of this, I am not. I just get to report and trust the people around me to fix what's on the report, to make sure that the person who runs the report talks to the developer and says, fix this in WordPress and please do it by Friday. So,
Yep.
but at least I know what I'm looking at now. But
Yeah.
it takes some tough love. And Stephen would even tell you, I think, for as busy as I was, and all that I juggle on my plate, and he knew that, just based on trying to get on my schedule. He also knew to pick the right time with me because this is my baby. It's hard not to take it personal sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
This is inspiring HR is almost a way my second kid, because I couldn't have more kids after I had the first kid. And I started inspiring HR so I could spend more time with the kid that's now 20 years old. So it's so easy to say, oh, it's just business, don't take it personal. That's awful hard that's not necessarily realistic advice. It's good
Yeah.
advice to remind yourself to keep your emotions in check, but to completely say, but it's not your kid, it's a business.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if people who started a business from a ground up would say I can go that far, because I've invested so much of my own personal time, money, and energy into making this a thing that I
Right.
hope provides a good living for 9 other people plus our contractors.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, but anyway, he gave me tough love. He found me Gordon, who's been a gift in terms of analytics. That's what we needed. I needed data
Yeah.
to make
Yep.
informed decisions and really confirm or dispel my suspicions that something was wrong.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like having a marketing strategist. And this was one thing that like I love that you and I were still able to have this relationship, even though knowing you already had a marketing strategist. It was like, I just love you and I love your business and right, the whole uncomplicating thing. We have so many
Well,
things in
that's where you
common.
and I think, bonded, is we both swim in this vision of uncomplicate the complicated. So, or
Yes.
what seems
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah. So I love the fact that, and this is great because I don't like to, on this show, I don't want to make it like all about me and the clients I work with and the work that I do. So I love that we have another example of someone who sits in a similar role to me, who you were working with as a marketing strategist, being that outsider looking in. That's a lot of the times when I'm talking to prospective clients, it's this conversation. They're like, well, we have a website person and we have someone doing SEO for us. We have, these contractors usually. And I'm like, that's great. It's also really beneficial to get an outsider's perspective, just to peek behind the curtain and look at things through a different lens. Not to say that I'm going to, go in looking to try and get somebody in trouble or point out mistakes or missed opportunities, but it's really that, I don't know if you want to call it a system of checks and balances or just that outsider's perspective to say, well, what about this? And what, to your point, all these errors that were revealed in this SEM Rush report, like you would have never known.
I think there were 99 of them. But I was like, ah! Like that was just a big number.
Yes.
So, and now it's like a couple a week that we have to fix that are sort of unexplained, glitchy little something or others with a plugin in WordPress or something.
Yes. Yep.
So,
and for our listeners, I do want to go back to that in case people are not as familiar, because Mindy does her homework and she educates herself on all these marketing things. 404 errors have to do with website pages that are no longer like live and linked. So if you've made major website changes and maybe changed the URLs and the website person did not create redirects for those pages, those links can still be living who knows where out on the internet.
That's indexing. For anybody who's wondering, that's what indexing means. That page, even though you retired it, is living somewhere else in the internet world.
Yes. And to not have those redirected to the new page is what causes all these errors, which, especially when you get up to having, 99 of them, does not bode well for your SEO on your website.
No. And in fairness, some of those 99 may have come over from the first site.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
The original person that we didn't even have a vision or a set brand, to the person we worked with 8 years, to an update where we were finally really solid on our brand and what exactly we wanted on the website, including forms and calls to action. So it's just, interesting journey. You know what? I like it. I liken some of this too for any business owner who's sort of getting overwhelmed, particularly if you're growing and you're attempting to scale, and maybe you're going to sit in the visionary or the integrator's seat and hire people who are actually going to produce the product or provide the service. All of this stuff, when you surround yourself with smarter people than you to give differing opinions, remind yourself to just eventually get to a point that you can only hear so much. And I'm going to give this as an example of the marketing world. I don't know if this is true, but this is how I feel. When I was searching for a new website provider, as you know, because you and I chatted about who would be the best fit at some point, through that journey of vetting providers and getting to where we landed now, if I took 10 different marketing strategists or marketing teams, I feel like all 10 of them would give me a different example of, is the Yoast score important? And what do we do about it? And these are all marketing professionals that I trust. But at some point, there's too many opinions, and then it all becomes noise. So kind of be sensitive to how many more people do I need to ask before I just make a decision with what, by and large, your gut is telling you in the moment. But your gut you should rely on in a way. If that's your baby and you've been significantly involved in defining your brand, you should trust your gut a little bit to know. You don't have to get so mathematical with the data that you go for perfection paralysis, but be careful not to crowd your head with too many opinions, and you're just going to confuse yourself and not make a decision.
I love that you brought this up, because a lot of times, especially in my marketing support group where I'm working with solo business owners who are implementing their own marketing, I say this all the time when they ask me a specific question. I'm like, you could ask 5 different marketers and get 5 different opinions. This is the way I would approach it. Mm-hmm. So I love that you said that.
Good way to answer it. And you're absolutely right. So,
because it's not like my way is the only way. There's so many of us who have so many different experiences that we bring to the table in the ways that we advise clients. And so I think, I always like to think in terms of people who are listening, what can they take away from this conversation we're having? I think it comes down to trust. And like you said, trusting your gut and finding that expert that, you get a good sense of what their background is, what type of marketing are they rooted in, what are the types of clients they've worked with, what areas do they focus on when they're looking at your marketing, like asking those questions to really figure out, does this sound like what I need, or is this not the way that I really want to approach my marketing? I think
Right.
is, and I'm curious if you have anything else to add to that, Mindy, as far as
Well,
people
one thing you might
evaluating.
want to tell your listeners, since I mentioned Yoast, do you want to tell everybody what Yoast is?
Oh, yeah. So it's really, I think it's only for WordPress
It's
websites.
in WordPress. So you can measure site health, and then there's the Yoast score. And I think like there's a, like for me in my industry, professional services has like this benchmark of a Yoast score, but in
Mhm.
reality, I'm like, it's Yoast. It's some sort of SEO measurement plugin in WordPress that just got
Yes.
popular over a period of time. I have great marketing people that look at me and say, I don't even worry about my Yoast score, and
Yes.
they're very successful people. So it's just
Yep.
one of the things. The journey I would say in all of that is, if I really had to sum up where I was to where I am now, just start measuring things and then try and figure out if those are the things that are worth measuring according to
Mhm.
your vision and strategy, and then tweak it. Like for us, we were measuring 10 things. And I'm like, that's too many. What are the 5 most important? And we whittled down to the 5 most important. And that's what we measure every month. Yes, it's a lagging indicator in a lot of ways, but at least I feel like I've got the measurement I need to keep my eye on the ball with oversight of all of the people that are mixed into this recipe of
Mhm.
marketing strategy and execution.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this is another reason we get along so well, because I am big on the data and having data to help inform the decisions that we're making on marketing.
I credit
And
my CEO groups for my love of data because I didn't love it when I first started, but I've been around enough
many people
CEOs
don't.
that they're very data driven. I mean, these are the people that
Yeah.
grill me on my P&L and talk about gross margin and profit margin. And as soon as you start having those conversations, you'll start looking at other things you're not measuring, but you should.
Yes. Yeah. So I like the point that you brought up, right? In case listeners don't know what Yoast is, it's specific to WordPress websites. It measures a whole bunch of things. Something going back to earlier in our conversation where when we talked about SEMrush or SEMrush, depending on how people want to call it, that's like an outside provider that you can put any website into. So it doesn't have to be a WordPress
See,
website.
I didn't even know
Um,
that. I thought he just had some magic report button. I don't care,
yeah.
but it had good data on it.
Yeah, yes. So SEMrush is a paid service. So you have to have an account in order to be able to run reports for websites. There are other sites out there. The Hoth is another one. So if for those business owners who are like, I'm curious about my SEO score, the Hoth you can get some free information from. I don't believe SEMrush gives anything out for free. I think you need a paid account. But those are some things that you can kind of start poking around and be like, okay, I have some doubts about my website. I paid someone to redo it, or they've been maintaining it, but I just don't feel like, it's performing for us. And that's another thing too. And I want to be mindful of our time, but another thing that occurred to me through this conversation, Mindy, is that a lot of times business owners hire a website person just thinking that that website person is going to take care of everything website related. Right. And that's so not the case. And again, this is a conversation I have time and time again where business owners are like, well, I hired someone to do I just had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. She was like, well, I hired someone to build the website, but they asked me for all the content. And
Yeah.
I'm not a content writer. Like, I know my industry, but like, I'm not a website copywriter. And so those are the things I think, especially when it comes to something like a website, right? There's so many intricate details that feed into a full blown website project, right? There's the SEO side, there's the copywriting, there's the visual design. Do you need a new logo? Do you need that visual brand? Do you need the values? And I know you've done a ton of work on like that side of your brand, not just the visual brand,
Love
but that kind of
value.
like, who are we as a business? Those are all things that feed into that website. And so often business owners just think, I'm going to go hire someone to redo my website and it'll be good to go. That's not
Well, all those
necessarily the
pieces,
case.
if anyone's curious, all those pieces that you just mentioned, so as a small business owner growing, you get sticker shock at one of what some of these larger agencies charge. But if you want a single invoice to pay every month or every quarter, and that agency has all these specialists to do all of those things you just listed, that's why
Mm-hmm.
they're so expensive. So then you have to
Yeah.
figure out what piece, if you're going to go the independent contractor route to work with you, what pieces are most important than you afford, and now you've got to live with, I'm managing 3 or 4 contractors instead of paying a single invoice to one
Yes.
company that gave me an account manager that funnels my work out to 4 or 5 specialists. So
Yes.
yeah, you
Or
have to choose what path is best for you based on budget and your stress
yes.
tolerance sometimes.
Yeah. And another option too, which I've gotten into some of this work on a minimal basis, is the fractional CMO route, right? Like, so
Yes.
having that fractional CMO who has that extensive network, I mean, right, you have to go through the vetting process, make sure they do, but if they have that network of those providers that they can bring in, so you're only, writing that one check per month to the fractional CMO, and they're making sure that all of it's getting done.
Yeah, on the flip side, I always worried that one big check a month, because a lot of times with the big agencies, it's a big check to write and a big gamble right out of the gate when so many of them are known to just provide general phone it in service. It just
Yeah.
I feel like many of them have not done a good job of articulating you will be taken care of and you'll get a really good customized outcome, and here's the path to do it. I think they go more on, we're a big agency, we have a good reputation, and they probably are justified based on their labor cost to charge what they charge. But as the person seeking the support, be really sure you're going to get the projected ROI you're hoping for before you start writing that big check or committing to a 12-month agreement of some sort.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one thing I like to talk to potential clients about too, is that the way, so again, this for our listeners who might be thinking like, okay, I need more marketing help, but I don't know which route to go. Do I go hire a big agency who could just do it all for me? Do I try and find contractors? Do I find a fractional CMO? One thing to consider, and this is what I always tell my clients, is like, when you work with me, or I think with a lot of other fractional CMOs too, the way I structure it, I would guess many others do too, is like, it's a collaborative approach to figure out what is the budget that you're comfortable with? How can we roll this out in stages? Whereas going to an agency, right? I think they're more apt to be like, okay, so let's do this for 1 year. You're going to pay this amount for that. And that might work for some people, some business owners, and some budgets, but it doesn't work for a lot of small business owners. And so if you can find a provider who can work with you and say, okay, if this is what you're comfortable spending, let's do this piece first, because this is the most important, right? So usually that might be the website. If there's gaping holes in the website, like, let's address these things first. And then the next stage would be, okay, let's build the lead magnet and the email marketing funnel that's going to go along with that, and kind of roll it out so that it's easier check to write rather than everything all out.
Do you
Out.
feel like you're working with people that are confident in a budget number to spend annually?
No.
Yeah. So if you want a quick story, my other learn, since I mentioned the CEO group, I was a far better business owner, leader, and selector of who we are working with next when making a vendor or provider change, because as soon as I got my P&L order and I understood what a profit margin was and a gross margin is, which is cost of goods sold, by the way, which for us is our labor cost, because that's what we're providing. We're providing HR consulting services, so that's a labor cost. If you find the right accountant to get your P&L in QuickBooks or whatever you are using organized, one of those juicy nuggets I got out of one of my CEO groups was, okay, you guys asked me month over month over month, what is my marketing budget? This is a confidential space. This is a confidential space where I'm supposed to feel safe. So I'm going to look at all of you that have been doing this far longer than I, and for which I'm still intimidated by, and say, I don't know what the hell a marketing budget is. What is it? And what is it supposed to be for the professional services industry? And I swear to God, I will never forget this. This person that I admire the most immediately raised their hand and said, it's typically 5% of projected growth revenue. And I said, awesome, thank you. And that was the end of that. And I have gone somewhere in the neighborhood of a 5 to 7% budget for marketing every year based on our projected growth revenue. And it has to be adjusted if we're not hitting our targets in terms of revenue every quarter. But for anybody else who's working in the professional services space, just so you know, it took me years for somebody to finally raise their hand and said, this is the general benchmark. And finally, I had something to go by. So I hope that helps some of your listeners.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That
came
up in a recent conversation. Yes. Yeah. I've heard like 5 to 10%, depending on the industry. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
awesome.
There's so many small business owners that just say, I'll get to the P&L eventually. As long as there's money in the checking account, I'm good. But
Yep.
if you really don't understand where all your money that's incoming is used for expenses year over year, at some point you can't make informed decisions until you get that P&L organized and understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mindy, you have shared so many great nuggets with our audience today. I
Yeah.
am confident that our listeners are gaining tons of value out of this conversation. As we wrap things up, is there anything that you want to hammer home that you already said? Anything that you feel like, oh, we didn't touch on this that I want to tell business owners? I know you're a wealth of knowledge.
Well, I'll close with we didn't get to touch on it. And if you have me back, which I would love to anytime, we can talk
Yeah.
about it more. When I posted out about you and inviting me to this episode, my love of working with marketing people wasn't immediate. My love of marketing people came when we bothered to define our values and we were able to build a visual brand around our values that we apply internally as much as it has become a part of our marketing and our service promise to our clients. So when you define your values, make sure if you're working with a marketing person that you incorporate those values, not just as something that looks nice on the website. You can actually leverage them into your marketing campaigns as much as you can leverage them to keep fine tuning your own culture and the value proposition for your current and future hires. So that's when I really started to be increasingly. I always have loved marketing in terms of the marketing people I've worked with or know, but I don't really feel like it made its way into my heart until I started pairing our values work with marketing vision and strategy.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I've never heard anybody say that before, and that makes so much sense to me. And I will just say on that note, when business owners come to me and they want to work with me and we have a conversation and I just kind of see that there's some holes or some missing pieces in that what I'll call foundational clarity, because that's what this I have a clarity coach now that I partner with. And so when clients come to me and they don't have some of these key pieces, I have them work with her first to really get that foundational clarity, because then she talks about you move from the foundational clarity to the strategic clarity to the execution clarity. And that's I work in that strategy and execution space, and she works at that foundational level. So I
If you
absolutely
like
love it.
clarity, you should definitely read the book Traction or start to look at EOS, because they EOS in terms of running and leading a business talks about clarity breaks, like it's sort of like a short session with the leader team to reset it. Talks about, you need clarity by building out an accountability chart and blah, blah, blah. So I love the clarity part of this infinite game of continuous improvement.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mindy, for coming on the show. I would love to have you back again. Absolutely. I feel like we've already gone over time, so I know we could fill a whole nother episode with lots of value for listeners.
Good.
Lastly, I just want to give you the opportunity, if people want to reach out to you, learn more about Inspiring HR, what is the best way for them to learn more?
Well, go to our website, inspiringhr.com. You can subscribe to our newsletter. But if you really want to reach me, just fill out our contact us form, and I would be happy to reach back out to you. We got rid of that silly little chat bot that popped up and said, do you have a question? Because one of our promises is you get a real human. And as soon as I realized, although the chat bot might be good for the website, it was contrary to our service promise of you get a real human, I took it down. So the contact us form is a great way to reach me. You also can follow me on LinkedIn or follow Inspiring HR on LinkedIn. For anybody thinking they need HR advice, but they're just not sure, they need long-term HR help, we'd be happy to give you a free consultation. First 45 minutes is always free. Or you can call me the old-fashioned way, 804-715-1920.
Love it. Love it. I love that you practice what you preach and you stay true to those values. So that's awesome. Thanks so much, Mindy. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Appreciate the opportunity. Have a good day, and hopefully we'll catch up when I'm in New York in a week or two.
Yes, hopefully.